In the late 3rd millennium BC, Mesopotamia's political map was a mosaic of city-states, Ur, Uruk, Larsa, and Isen, each vying for regional advantage. Beyond the Tigris-Euphrates heartland lay the semi-arid plains inhabited by West Semitic tribes collectively known as Amorites. These clans maintained a semi-nomadic, pastoral lifestyle, periodically raiding settled towns, but also integrating through trade, intermarriage, and service as mercenaries. By around 1900 BC, a powerful Amorite chief named Sumer seized the abandoned site of Babylon, a minor settlement on the Euphrates' eastern bank, and declared himself its ruler. Though his control was initially limited, Sumer's decision marked the birth of the first Babylonian dynasty. Babylon's early rulers, Sumer's successors Sabium, Apelsin, and Sinuces, focused on consolidating local power. They refurbished mud-brick city walls, repaired canal networks that irrigated date groves and barley fields, and maintained cordial ties with neighboring city kings through diplomacy and intermarriage. Unlike the great temple cities to the south, early Babylon was not yet the religious center of Marduk worship. Its rise was driven by strategic location rather than divine patronage. Situated midway between northern trade routes and the grain-rich southern plains, Babylon became a convenient relay for caravans carrying timber from the Zagros, copper from the Gulf, and textiles from the Diyala region. By the reign of Sumalaka around 1860 BC, Babylonian ambitions expanded. He campaigned against Larsa and Isen, securing tributary treaties that delivered grain and labor for public works. At Eridu, canal surveyors from Babylon introduced scaled measurement techniques, developments in land administration that would later underpin Hammurabi's famous code. Under Sinuces and his son Waradsin, Babylon's elite patronized local scribal schools, producing the earliest known Babylonian versions of Sumerian literary and ritual texts. Clay tablets from this era trace the codification of economic transactions, standardizing weights, setting interest rates on loans of barley, and establishing protocols for commercial partnerships. By around 1810 BC, however, Babylon remained one among several Amorite-ruled city-states. Its transformation into Mesopotamia's preeminent power was still 2 generations away. Yet the foundations had been laid, a settled dynasty drawing on Amorite martial vigor, pragmatic diplomacy with Sumerian neighbors, a growing bureaucratic apparatus, and early experiments in legal and economic standardization. These developments set the stage for the rise of Babylon's greatest ruler, Hammurabi, whose reign would weld Amorite energy and Sumerian tradition into a unified imperial system. When Hammurabi ascended the Babylonian throne in 1792 BC, Babylon remained one of several powers jostling for dominance in southern Mesopotamia. Building on his forebears' foundations, Hammurabi combined military prowess with shrewd diplomacy to transform Babylon into the region's preeminent empire. Early in his reign, he forged alliances with Elamite rulers to the east and Amorite chiefs to the west, securing his flanks while focusing on rival city-states such as Mari, Ashnuna, and Larsa. Hammurabi's initial campaigns were calculated. In 1790 BC, he marched on Mari. Rather than razing the city, he installed a puppet governor, leveraging Mari's lucrative caravan routes along the Euphrates. This blend of coercion and co-optation conserved resources and maintained trade continuity. Next, he targeted Ashnuna, whose control of agricultural hinterlands threatened Babylon's food supplies. In 1788 BC, a rapid siege compelled Ashnuna's king to surrender, binding the city to Babylon through tribute while leaving its local administration intact. Diplomatic marriages further strengthened Hammurabi's position. He married daughters into powerful families in Uruk and Kassura, weaving a web of kinship ties that discouraged rebellion. Correspondence found in his archives reveals treaties sealed with oaths before multiple gods, Marduk, Enlil, and Shamash, underscoring the divine sanction of these agreements. By 1786 BC, after subjugating Larsa in protracted conflict, Hammurabi proclaimed himself king of Sumer and Akkad. His military consolidation was matched by symbolic gestures. He refurbished the Asagila temple in Babylon's city center, dedicating it to Marduk, and conducted grand religious processions to unify disparate populations under shared cultic celebrations. Hammurabi's reign illustrates the interplay of force and finesse. He preferred vassalage over total destruction, recognizing that maintaining local elites under Babylonian oversight yielded greater stability. His combined diplomatic networks and battlefield victories laid the groundwork for an empire stretching from the Zagros foothills to the Gulf, an entity held together by treaties, garrisons, and a burgeoning administrative apparatus. This calculated ascendancy set a benchmark for subsequent Mesopotamian rulers and cemented Hammurabi's reputation as both warrior and statesman. Around 1754 BC, Hammurabi left a legacy that endures far beyond lost Babylonian battalions, the Code of Hammurabi. Carved onto a 2.25-meter diorite stele and erected in the public square of Babylon, the code comprises 282 laws detailing offenses and corresponding punishments under the principle of lex talionis, an eye for an eye. Yet beneath this retributive veneer lay a sophisticated framework for social cohesion and economic regulation. The prologue of the code invokes Marduk as the divine sponsor, framing Hammurabi as the shepherd king appointed to ensure justice for the weak, widows, orphans, and the poor, while punishing the powerful who transgressed social norms. Laws address a spectrum of matters, from property rights, family law, and professional malpractice to commercial transactions and labor contracts. For instance, Law 53 stipulates that a builder whose negligence causes a house to collapse bears the death penalty, whereas Law 8 fixes fines for minor contract breaches. Importantly, the code codified existing Sumerian and Akkadian customary law, harmonizing regional variations into a single, empire-wide standard. This uniformity facilitated trade and reduced conflict by providing clear adjudication procedures. Local judges, appointed in each city, conducted trials publicly, heard witnesses, and delivered judgments based on the code's articles, recorded on clay tablets for posterity. Beyond criminal and civil regulations, the code enforced social hierarchies. Penalties varied according to the perpetrator's and victim's status, nobles, commoners, and slaves, reflecting a stratified society. Yet protections existed. Laws 202 to 203 guarantee compensation for a slave injured by a free man's livestock, indicating an early form of liability law. The Steele's epilogue warns judges against corruption. Let the judge who condemns the innocent and acquits the guilty be doused with water and borne to his doom. This solemn oath underscores the code's emphasis on judicial integrity as the linchpin of societal order. Hammurabi's vision, a centralized legal corpus under divine authority, reshaped Mesopotamian governance and influenced subsequent Near Eastern lawgivers, from the Hittites to the Israelites. Central to Babylon's imperial stability was its capacity to feed a diverse population spanning urban centers and rural hinterlands. Hammurabi invested heavily in rehabilitating and expanding Mesopotamia's ancient irrigation network. Canals that had silted under neglect were dredged, new branch canals carved, and levees reinforced to control the floodwaters of the Euphrates and Tigris. Administrative tablets from the Temple of Shamash in Sippar record seasonal allocations of labor for canal maintenance, underscoring the link between state authority and agricultural infrastructure. Granaries dotted the countryside, managed by temple and palace administrators. Standardized clay tokens and bulli evolved into cuneiform accounting tablets, enabling precise record-keeping of grain yields, livestock tallies, and labor quotas. Surplus storage allowed Babylon to buffer against drought and flood-induced shortages, then redistribute provisions during lean years, fortifying loyalty among subject cities. Trade flourished along riverine and overland routes. Babylonian merchants chartered reed bark vessels laden with barley, dates, and woven textiles downriver to Dilmun, that is modern-day Bahrain, and up to Anatolian copper sources. Overland caravans traversed to Mari and beyond, exchanging Babylonian silver rings and alabaster bowls for timber, gold, and exotic spices. State control over commerce manifested in regulated weight standards, shekel and mina measures fixed across the realm, and in royal monopolies on high-value commodities like bitumen and lapis lazuli. Market inspectors enforced fair pricing and breach of commercial trust, such as adulteration of oil or miscasting of metal, incurred penalties under the code. This intricate nexus of irrigation, storage, and trade underpinned Babylon's demographic expansion. Urban populations in Babylon, Sippar, and Larsa swelled, while rural villages prospered from consistent water access. By ensuring grain security and facilitating long-distance exchange, the economy became both the backbone and the lubricant of Hammurabi's empire. From its modest beginnings, Babylon's patron deity, Marduk, rose to supreme prominence under Hammurabi. Prior to his reign, Marduk had been a local city god. Hammurabi elevated him to the head of the pantheon, supplanting older deities such as Enlil of Nippur. The Asagila temple complex, rededicated and enlarged by Hammurabi, served as the religious heart of the empire. Here, priests performed elaborate New Year rituals, the Akkad festival, where the king reenacted cosmic renewal by receiving the divine mandate from Marduk's high priest. Hammurabi's inscriptions depict him receiving the rod and ring symbol, representations of justice and authority, directly from Marduk. This imagery reinforced his role as the god's earthly representative. Temple endowments funded by the king's tribute ensured that the priesthood remained loyal. In turn, priests legitimized royal decrees by invoking divine sanction. Royal annals record temple building in every subject city, installing Marduk's shrines alongside local cults. This syncretic policy placated conquered peoples by respecting indigenous gods while subtly asserting Marduk's supremacy. In Mari, for example, Hammurabi dedicated a new sanctuary to Akkad, the storm god, even as he politically subsumed the city. Astrological omens and divination guided state decisions. Archival texts at Sapar show Hammurabi seeking lunar eclipse readings before launching campaigns. By intertwining religious observance with governance, the king presented his rule as harmonious with cosmic order, thus fusing faith and statecraft. This fusion of kingship and religion institutionalized a theocratic monarchy whose theological underpinnings echoed through later Mesopotamian dynasties, from the Kassites to the Neo-Babylonians. By mid-reign, Hammurabi's empire stretched from the Zagros foothills to the Persian Gulf. Governing such a diverse territory demanded systematic administration. Hammurabi divided his realm into provinces, each overseen by a royal governor who collected tribute, commanded local garrisons, and administered justice according to the code. A parallel network of palace agents reported directly to Babylon, preventing governors from accumulating unchecked power. Communication relied on a network of way stations along major canals and overland routes. Royal couriers, protected by fast vessels or mounted riders, delivered imperial edicts, tribute schedules, and logistical directives. Administrative archives in Sealand, Mari, and Larsa reference standardized forms and sealed letters, illustrating remarkable bureaucratic uniformity. Taxation combined regular tribute, including grain, livestock, and handcrafted goods, with corvée labor obligations for public works. Temple and palace scribes maintained monthly registers of payments, enabling central authorities to anticipate shortfalls and dispatch relief. Judicial oversight was likewise hierarchical. Local judges handled minor disputes, while appeals, such as disputes between provinces, were adjudicated by magistrates in Babylon. The king periodically toured major cities, hearing petitions personally and reinforcing imperial presence. This layered governance model balanced centripetal control with local autonomy. Subject rulers retained limited self-rule in exchange for loyalty oaths and tribute, ensuring provincial stability. At its zenith, Hammurabi's administration unified disparate regions into a cohesive state apparatus, demonstrating that sophisticated bureaucracy was as vital to empire as military conquest. Despite vigorous administration, the old Babylonian Empire faced mounting external threats late in Hammurabi's reign and beyond. Elamite chieftains from Susa launched periodic raids across the eastern frontiers, targeting vulnerable irrigation towns like Dur and Dilbat. Hammurabi's tablets record emergency levies of troops and fortification of frontier outposts to blunt these incursions. To the north and west, Hittite expansion under King Hattusili I pressed into Anatolia, diverting trade routes and inspiring local rebellions in Mari and its client states. Babylon's disruption of Akkad-Mari caravans weakened economic ties, while Hittite mercenaries found employ among disaffected elites. Perhaps most consequential was the gradual southward movement of Kassite tribes, mountain pastoralists from the Zagros. Drawn by Mesopotamia's wealth and encouraged by political turmoil, Kassites settled in peripheral districts, initially as mercenary auxiliaries. Over time, their population swelled, establishing enclaves that challenged Babylonian authority. Hammurabi's successors, particularly Samsu-Iluna, struggled to contain these multifaceted pressures. Military resources were stretched thin. Revenue diverted to defense undermined public works. Temple records lament crop failures and recorded grain exports to fund garrison pay. The empire's frontiers, once secure, became zones of contested control, presaging the fragmentation that would follow. Hammurabi's passing in 1750 BC ushered in an era of instability. His son, Samsu-iluna, inherited an empire under external strain and burdened by enormous tribute obligations. Early in his reign, revolts ignited in Larsa, Uruk, and other southern cities resisting Babylonian heavy-handedness. Kassite settlers seized opportunities to establish semi-autonomous principalities in the Diyala region. Samsu-iluna's military campaigns, chronicled on clay tablets, recaptured rebellious cities but at great cost. Frequent palace coups and contested successions further fragmented central authority. Temple archives in Nippur record delays in ritual offerings as tributes fell behind, reflecting weakened fiscal capacity. Meanwhile, provincial governors exploited chaos to entrench local power. Mari's governor, Zimri-Lim, initially pledged loyalty but later allied with Elamite forces, threatening eastern provinces. In the north, Esnunna and Ishnunna, modern Konnakan, jockeyed for supremacy, forging transient coalitions and fracturing the once unified realm. By 1690 BC, Babylon's grip had receded to the core Euphrates Valley. Samsu-iluna's son, Abi-eshu, inherited diminished territories and faced relentless Kassite encroachments. The dynasty's prestige eroded as peasant uprisings disrupted agriculture and trade corridors. What had been a flourishing empire under Hammurabi now teetered on the brink of disintegration. Around 1595 BC, Elamite king Kudirnahunti sacked Babylon, delivering the final blow to the old Babylonian dynasty. The city's palaces and temples were looted, royal archives destroyed. In the ensuing power vacuum, Kassite chieftains, long simmering on the fringes, seized control. Agum-Kakrime, the first Kassite ruler to assert kingship in Babylon, adopted the title King of Sumer and Akkad, signaling continuity with past glories. The Kassites brought relative stability. They maintained Babylon's irrigation infrastructure and reinstated temple cults, albeit under Kassite patron gods. Their rule, lasting nearly 4 centuries, introduced Kassite language elements into Akkadian, reformed provincial boundaries, and continued using Hammurabi's code as a legal foundation. Though foreign in origin, the Kassite Interlude demonstrates both the adaptability of Mesopotamian institutions and the enduring allure of Babylon as a political center. The old Babylonian empires collapse thus paved the way for a new dynasty that blended immigrant vitality with inherited bureaucratic frameworks. Though short-lived compared to later empires, the old Babylonian state under Hammurabi bequeathed an enduring legacy. His code influenced Hittite, Assyrian, and Hebrew legal traditions. Literary works compiled in Babylonian scribal schools, such as the Hymn to Shamash and the Enuma Elish creation myth, formed part of the Mesopotamian canon for centuries. Economically, the sophisticated irrigation and trade networks established under Hammurabi underpinned southern Mesopotamia's prosperity through the Kassite and even Neo-Babylonian periods. Babylonian urban planning, monumental temples, orthogonal street grids, and ziggurat-centered precincts inspired subsequent city designs across the Near East. Culturally, Babylon's role as a melting pot of Sumerian, Akkadian, Amorite, and Kassite traditions fostered a cosmopolitan ethos. Its scribal schools preserved cuneiform literacy, enabling later Assyrian and Persian administrations to adapt Mesopotamian record-keeping practices. In conclusion, the old Babylonian Empire's achievements in law, governance, and urban culture laid cornerstones for Western legal thought, imperial administration, and the very idea of the city as a center of civilization, threads that weave through history from Mesopotamia to modernity. And there, fellow travelers, concludes our voyage through the rise, triumph, and transformation of the old Babylonian Empire. From nomadic Amorite chieftains to the law-gifting reign of Hammurabi, to the ashes of Babylon and the dawn of Kassite rule, this chapter of Mesopotamian history laid foundations in law, bureaucracy, and urban culture that shaped civilizations for millennia. If you've enjoyed uncovering how ancient kings, canals, and legal codes forged the world's first great city-state empire, be sure to like, subscribe, and ring the bell for more deep dives with Ancient Odyssey. Until our next expedition, stay curious, stay bold, and keep exploring history's hidden chapters.